right then and there, the grieving process was pretty much over. And it was probably 15, 20 minutes or so after finding out that my brother was, so I had about that length of time to grieve. And I had to jump back into Army mode. I had 10 or so guys that I was responsible for. I had to be there for them and make sure that they had the leadership that they needed. I could have done this. I should have done that. All of these things could have, should have, would have. We just have to live with the way things are and focus on reality. Every time I have a conversation with somebody else, it's just going to help me process things just a little bit better and understand a little bit about myself, a little bit about what I'm going through. The more of these conversations I can have, the better maybe I'll be. I did enlist as an E4, and so that's where I started off. And initially, I when I was signing up and everything, I thought, hey, this is going to be great. I'll start off a little higher rank. It'll help me advance a little bit faster, and that was true. It did get me, a little bit faster as far as promotions and all that kind of stuff. But day one of basic training. Got off the bus and a drill sergeant is like in my face. When after they had issued the uniform and rank and all that kind of stuff, drill sergeant's in my face and he looks at it, he's like, why the hell are you wearing that rank? And I'm like, well, I had a college degree and so they let me enlist as an E4. And he just looks at me, he goes, you want to die, don't you? And then he walks away. I was like, well, how do you respond to that? Holy crap. That was a little bit of an eye opener. And it basically the entire time of basic training, they would look at me and kind of just give me hell about that. Any little mistake that I would make, they're like, we're going to take that rank from you if you keep making these kind of mistakes. And it's like, everyone makes mistakes at basic training. Like that's part of it, and, they never did take the rank. I tried to fly under the radar as much as possible, but it's kind of hard to do with the E4 rank on your chest as you're going through training. So, that definitely made me stand out because I was the only one in my, at least my platoon. I don't know about the company that I was in. There might've been one other, or something, but I know I was probably the highest ranking, recruit at that time in my, platoon. So, it was kind of tough, to go through basic training that way. They kept, hammering it into me, but it did put me into some leadership positions in, basic training where they would make me, a squad leader or something like that. And, they would look at me to, make sure that things were going right in my squad. And, it's kind of hard when you got a bunch of guys where they know exactly as much as I know because we're at the same point in our training and I have to lead them and make sure that they're doing the things that are right. And they're trying to do the right things, but I don't always know the right things because I'm still new too. And that's, I think they do that on purpose to kind of set you up for failure to know like nobody's going to get this 100% going through. And it's just to see how you deal with the stress, I think is how they do that. I don't know the exact reason, but that's my suspicion anyways.
Yeah. They're going to put you into these high stress situations because that's what you're going to encounter, right?
Yeah.
It doesn't matter what rank you're in. You're going to be put into is unusual, something you've never experienced before, different situations. Right. And, you're going to have to think quickly. So I know I kind of experienced that in a way coming from the Navy to the Army. I got to keep my rank. I was E5 at the time. So I came into the Army as a sergeant and went into EOD where I was in charge. I was responsible for privates, specialists that had done the job for years before me, even getting in there. So, yeah. I can see where you're coming from though. So tell me about your brother's incident and
sure.
The circumstances around that.
Yeah, sure. So like I was saying before, we both were in Afghanistan at the same time, and his unit was This was in late August. His unit was out on patrol going through a village near their base that was known to harbor Taliban, individuals. And they had some experience in that village before, not good experiences. They were in firefights, and they knew it was a dangerous area. And I guess the way that they traveled into this village, they kind of were walking around this mountain, like trails that were kind of winding around a mountain, I guess. And as they were coming around a corner, they were ambushed, and my brother was at kind of taking point on this patrol as they're walking through, and he was the first one coming around, and he got hit in that initial attack, and he was pretty much instantly when he was shot. And obviously that mission that they were on, where they were going to go into this village, it changed from a mission where they were going kind of on the offensive to now they're on the defensive, because now they have a soldier that's down, and they need to get him out of there. It became more of a recovery mission at that point. And so they got a team together. They went and got a litter, picked him up, and were trying to carry him out. And as they're doing so, they're still under fire and they're taking fire from several directions. It was not like just a one guy who was just taking pot shots at them or anything. It was a well coordinated attack on them. And as they were carrying him out, they took RPG fire, and another soldier, one of the ones who was carrying him, was in that attack as well. So, unfortunately, we lost 2 soldiers that day, and I believe there were some Afghan soldiers who were injured, and there are definitely more injuries as well, on the American side as well. But two American KIAs, one of which was my brother, and so I've talked to several of the guys who were with him that day on that mission, and their stories are just like I couldn't even imagine being there and what they had to endure going through. They did not have a great area for cover or anything like that. They were exposed. It was just not a great mission to be on, and it was really difficult. But where I was that day, my unit was also out on a mission. We were doing actually a very similar mission. We were patrolling through a village. We had flown in to a mountaintop outside of this village the night before before we were going to go through this village, and our mission was a mission, like a joint mission with the Afghan army, and the Afghan army was kind of taking point on this mission, and they were going in and clearing the houses and doing all the stuff that we had trained them to do. We were working with them prior to this mission. They were not the most motivated group of individuals to train, and it was very hard to train them. And you could tell that they were not taking the training very seriously. They would train for half hour, 45 minutes, maybe an hour, and then they just kind of wander off, and it was like herding cats. Like you couldn't get them to come back to do any sort of real training. And so like you got very limited time with them, and we really had no authority over them to tell them what to do or where to go. And their leadership didn't really seem to care either. So it wasn't the best training. And when they would go through these houses and they'd be searching for stuff, they'd find some things if they were obvious, but they most certainly missed a lot when they were going through. I had gotten a call on the radio saying that my commanding officer was looking for me. He wanted to speak with me. And I know you know this, but anyone else listening who is familiar with the chain of command, like I was an E5 and commanding officer looking to talk to an E5 directly is either you did something really good or you screwed something up. And I couldn't think of anything extraordinary that I did that day that was really good. So I was like, what the hell did I screw up?
Yeah, who lost some nods? Who lost a weapon? Who left the weapon in the chow hall?
That was my first thought, was who lost something. And I went to all the guys I was responsible for. I was a squad leader, and I was looking at all of their sensitive items, their nods, their weapons, their everything. Anything that had a serial number, I was checking it. I had a list of everything just to make sure, and they all had their stuff. So I was like, okay, it's not that, thankfully. It's not like anyone missed anything. What else could it possibly be? And I couldn't figure it out. So eventually I linked up with him, and he told me to, come off to the side away from everybody else and take a knee. And I'm like, okay, like what is going on? He seems like super calm for this to be like me screwing something up. Like I would expect my head to be ripped off by now. And he said, he had some bad news, that my brother's unit was ambushed and that my brother was hit. And again, remember I was saying earlier that I never really considered the fact that my brother could be seriously injured or killed on this deployment. It just didn't even cross my mind. And so I'm thinking to myself, okay, well, he's hurt. Okay, well, how do I get to him? What are the logistics here? How to, get me out of here? Let me get to him, for moral support or, whatever I can do to help him. Let me get there. And he looked at me kind of strange, like I had 3 heads or something. Like, no, man, I don't think you understand that he's been. And in that moment, it felt like a punch to the gut. It sucked the air right out of me, and I didn't know how to deal with that. It was such a shock to me. I think I literally was in shock for a few minutes. Like I don't know how I managed to not completely lose it in that moment. But they managed to kind of get me calm and everything enough. And so I had a couple guys come hang out with me and make sure I was good. And then a few minutes later, we started taking fire from the village that we just came out of. The Afghan soldiers definitely did not find all the weapons that were in there, because we were taking RPG fire, we're taking small arms fire. There were definitely things that they missed that they should have found. Right then and there, the grieving process was pretty much over. And it was probably 15, 20 minutes or so after finding out that my brother was. So I had about that length of time to grieve, and I had to jump back into army mode. There's no timeout circle that I can go hang out in, and the Taliban's going to leave me alone because I got a case of the blues or whatever. I had to go and do my job. I had 10 or so guys that I was responsible for, and I had to be there for them and make sure that they had the leadership that they needed, that they were positioned correctly so that they didn't end up shooting each other by accident, or that they had the ammunition that they needed, that they had all the information and all the supplies, everything like that. That was on me. That was my job. And, if something had happened to one of them, that would be my responsibility. And so I had to stuff that grief away, and I had to figure out how to move forward and do my job. And it wasn't easy, because when those first shots rang out, it was nothing but pure rage flowing through my system. Like I wanted to go kill some people because I was just that angry. And I'm not entirely sure how I kept it together. I think it was really just the thought that, like, if I go rogue and go, Rambo style, just trying to go some people, I'm not making it out alive. And then, how do my parents get a second knock on the door saying that, hey, your other son is dead now too? My wife would get a knock on the door. My son would grow up without a father, and like none of that stuff sat well with me. So that's kind of how I kept it together. But it was hard. It wasn't easy to keep it together during that. And I think if I had less outside of the military connections, less family around, I probably would have lost it. And I probably would have gone and done something stupid. And so my guess is we probably wouldn't be sitting here having this conversation right now if I had done something stupid like that. But, thankfully I had that kind of ground me and keep me focused on, on what was going on. So, yeah, that was, I think you kind of alluded to this at the very beginning of this that was pretty much, that was the worst day of my life. And it was nothing I wish on anybody, because it was just a terrible situation.
Yeah. There's no, calling in, sick or
right.
You're on the battlefield, and it isn't like, guys, I need a few hours to grieve before we go, we fight the Taliban, right? Fight the insurgents. They're shooting. You got to get back in the game. Mm-hmm. So I understand. And I can't imagine how you'd function, though. And that's awful to be expected to function, to be able to process, or at least focus on the job.
Yeah. And the focus was one of the hardest things for me, because in the back of my head, all I'm thinking about is like my brother's gone. Like, how do I move forward? How do I process this? How do I deal with this? But then, like, kind of on the other side of my brain was like, hey, dummy, like, focus. Like, you got a job to do here, and you got to keep yourself, you got to keep your guys alive. And so, like, I had those two competing things going on in my brain, and it was hard to balance them out.
On the flip side of that, though, as guys, as men, and especially as war fighters, we're doers, fixers. Mm-hmm. We want to patch the hole and get back to work, right?
Sure.
And it's one of the things that has caused so much of this mental anguish, PTSD, other emotional trauma that come up because we don't deal with the tragedy. We don't sort through those emotions and actually digest them. So, when it comes to physical injuries, we want to slap a Israeli bandage on it. We want to put a tourniquet on it, and we want to get back into fighting shape. Yeah. When it comes to our own mental health, it's like we try to fill that gap with other activity, whether mm-hmm. it's just, working out or hanging out with the guys or running or something healthy. Sometimes it's diving into a bottle or, escaping through video games or something. The one thing we don't do is process those things that we had to put off or want to put off.
Yeah.
So tell me what the process was. So first, you found out you had to go back to work immediately after, mm-hmm. but then you got whisked off the battlefield pretty quickly, didn't you?
Yeah, I did. So after that was all taken care of, and the timeline is kind of fuzzy to me, but it was the same day, same afternoon time period. So it was within an hour or two or so after the firefight was kind of over. They flew in some helicopters, and there were a few injured people from that firefight. None super serious, more like rolled ankles and that type of thing. Nothing, thank God, nothing too serious from all that. But they flew in some helicopters, and I went out with those guys who were injuries, and they got me out of that area and off to Bagram that later that evening is where I ended up. And the next morning was on my way back home. I actually was on the same flight that my brother was on, and we flew out the next morning sometime. I forget exactly when, probably early morning. And I was able to escort him all the way to Kuwait, and that's where I kind of had to go my separate ways with him, but then ended up getting home. And when I got home, they had given me forget, 10 days or 2 weeks, something like that. I forget what the exact time period was that they gave me to be home. And then I was expected to come back to Afghanistan. And after my brother's, at my brother's funeral, the governor of the state of Connecticut, who, for folks who aren't familiar with the National Guard, the governor of whatever state you're in, also serves as the commander in chief in addition to the president of the United States. So, so she was at my brother's funeral, and she came up to my family and said to me and my family that she was going to order that I stay home and not go back. And so I ended up not having to go back to Afghanistan. Had she not done that, I would have been back a few days later in Afghanistan. I can only imagine how I would have been able to handle that. Probably not very well. And so I got to stay home, and that was, it's kind of a mixed blessing, because part of me was like, well, thankfully I get to stay home. I get to be with my family and, all of those things. And that'll be helpful, not only for me, but also for them. They won't have to worry about me going back to Afghanistan, and who knows what would happen there, if I went back. But then on the other hand, I was thinking about all my guys that I left over there, and, what would I do if something happened to them while I was still at home? And, that kind of tore me apart too, because I felt like I needed to be with them if God forbid something happened to them too. And I don't know if I'd be able to forgive myself if I wasn't there with them, if something had happened. Thankfully, nothing serious happened while I was gone. And so that's a bridge I never had to cross. But in the back of my head, I was thinking to myself, like, I really need to be there too. But when I was home, I, like you're talking about before, I did not really deal with it very well. I did not deal with any of it. Like a lot of guys, I kind of thought to myself, yeah, of course I'm sad now because, I just lost my brother. It's a sad thing, and I'll get better with time. Just give it time and things will get better. But it didn't get better because I didn't really know how to pick up that grieving process again. The grief that I kind of set aside when we got into that firefight, I never really dove back into it. I instead let the anger build up, that rage that I said I had after those shots rang out, on that day. I let anger take control of me. Every little thing would set me off. I had a 9-ish month old son at that time, and kids are messy, right? That's just part of being a kid. And any little thing that he would do, he'd spill his food on the floor, whatever, it would set me off, and I would just start yelling. And it's like yelling at a 9-month-old kid, like what the hell is wrong with me? Like that's stupid. Like the kid doesn't understand what I'm even saying. I would just, like, little things would set me off. It didn't matter if it was in traffic or at, getting back to work or any of the things, just little things would just set me off. And I was not a good person. I got to the point where I just didn't recognize who I was anymore. And I was coping by drinking too much. I say coping. It wasn't really coping. It was just how I was dealing with things. And, it didn't help. I wasn't sleeping. And so I drank basically to the point where I'd pass out, and then I'd be, you don't get good sleep when you're passed out like that. But, the next morning I'd wake up hungover. And so I'm drinking coffee and energy drinks and all this stuff to wake myself up so I'm somewhat functional the next day, and then just repeating the process at night and doing that over and over. And, eventually that catches up to you, and you can't keep doing it like that. And, so I just found myself spiraling downward and becoming a version of myself that I didn't recognize, and that I, quite frankly, I didn't like the person who I was becoming. And came to a point where I was like, I don't I don't want to keep being this person. I need to get some help because whatever I'm doing is not working, and um, I'm not the type of person that I want to be. I'm not the type of husband that I want to be to my wife. I'm not the type of father I want to be. As a, when my wife and I found out that she was pregnant, I kind of envisioned myself as being like the fun dad who would, do things with his kids and, go out in the yard and play and horse around and get dirty and all these kind of things. I don't want to do anything. I was just like there. I was there, but not really. I was just not fully present, and that wasn't a great place to be either. So, I eventually realized, like, if I keep going down this path, it's not going to lead to anything good. I'm going to end up losing my family. I'm going to maybe even lose myself. I don't know. I don't know where I'm going to end up, but this is not where I want to be. So, eventually I did end up making that phone call to get some help. And to be honest, it was one of the scariest phone calls I've ever had to make, because I had no idea what was waiting for me on the other end of that phone call. I didn't know if I was making an appointment to go get locked up in a padded room with a straitjacket, or if I was going to go sitting on a couch and spilling my guts out to somebody that I didn't know. Either way, it was kind of scary to me. And but I knew I needed to do something. And I figured that was a good first start. And turned out neither of those things were really all that scary. I didn't have to get locked up in a padded room, or, there's no straitjackets involved. But I got to talk with another combat vet who was my counselor. And, he helped me work through some of the anger issues that I was dealing with. And that was, it was a blessing, because I didn't know how to figure that out on my own.
A lot of people come back from the battlefield. A lot of fathers, some of them say they have trouble connecting with their kids and their spouses. They want to be good dads.
Yeah.
But it's like they can't muster the interest, or.
Yeah.
Was that something you experienced?
Yeah. So my son that I was talking to you about, who was about 9 months old when I came home, he was born just weeks before I deployed. So I was a first-time father and then deployed. I didn't know how to be a father. I didn't know anything about it. My wife had spent the previous 9 months being a mother, and there's kids don't come with a owner's manual. So, you kind of figure it out as you go along. Like, any parent would tell you, that's, you kind of just have to figure things out as you go. And so my wife had 9 months under her belt that I didn't have the luxury of having, because I wasn't there, physically. I wasn't even around. And when I came back home, I didn't really know where my place was in my own family, in my own house. And so I tried to kind of figure things out, but it seemed like my wife just had it all under control. So I didn't really know what to do. And so I felt like they had a connection that I wasn't able to necessarily get. Now, don't get me wrong. My wife wanted me to be involved, and she wanted me to, she wasn't like keeping me from doing anything or anything like that. It's just, I didn't know where I belonged. And so that was tough for me to deal with, because, had I been there the whole time, we would have just kind of fallen into a routine where my wife would have handled, certain things. I would have handled certain other things, and we would have just kind of figured it out together. And I felt like almost like an outsider coming into my house. And when I started noticing that, I kind of just like felt like I needed to withdraw a little bit and like, hey, you know what? She's got it. And let me just take a step back from all this. And, that's kind of just where I felt like I belonged, was not doing, hardly anything. And, it turns out that wasn't necessarily true, but it was just the mindset that I had at the time, I guess.
Yeah, it's familiar. actually, that feeling where you see they have it under control. My wife's got it under control. The kids seem fine. If I answer myself, I might mess things up. Right? And I don't know how. My oldest was born about 3 months before I deployed, and you're in the workups.
Yep.
Right? You're constantly gone, just getting ready for pre-deployment, and then I came home. I got to come home for 2 weeks, the 2 weeks of R&R for his first birthday, and then went right back to the battlefield. And about a month later, I was injured, and then it was a recovery and blind training. So my son was nearly 2 before I actually came home.
Sure. Yeah.
And so I know that feeling. It's a weird, awkward, sad, very depressing feeling. So I'm right there with you. And just to back up a little bit, from what you gathered of your brother's incident, do you feel, because here's one thing about my own, is that I've run through it a million times, backward and forward. Did I do everything right? Could I have done it differently? Which is a terrible thing, the trap to get into. But did you ever find out or try to find out if they did it correctly, if that patrol could have done things in a better way and avoided your brother's death?
Yeah. It's kind of hard to answer that 100%. I suspect that there is a way that it could have gone better, because there was some talk about how there were some last minute changes to the mission or something like that. Something came up where they probably shouldn't have done this mission, but I don't know the specific details on all of that and how that all went down. And I suspect it's largely because the folks who were in the know on that and had the background maybe didn't necessarily want to upset us. After what happened, they probably just want to be like, let's not rub salt in the wound or anything. Let's not make matters worse and make them think like, well, geez, it could have been different. Of course it could have been different. But one of the things that I do, unfortunately, to myself is I kick myself because I look at myself as the older brother. And as an older brother, I felt responsible for protecting my brother. As we were growing up, if, I joked around that, we would beat each other up in the backyard or whatever. And I'd usually come out ahead because I was bigger and everything. But, if they're bullies or anything like that, I remember in high school one time he was a freshman and I was a senior, and there's some sophomores that were kind of picking on him a little bit. And I kind of stepped in, and it wasn't like anything super serious, but the kids just went running after I stepped in. And so, that's kind of where I felt like I fit in was to be there for protection. And looking back on it, it's like, why didn't I join the same unit that he was in? Maybe I could have done something to help him. Maybe I could have been the one who went on that patrol instead. Maybe I could have been the one who was, and I look at that like I would have almost preferred it that way. But then the other side of me says, well, then I also would be putting this burden that I'm carrying around, I'd be putting that on him. And so, it's like a no-win situation with how, how I can wrap my mind around all this. But it's, a lot of things could have gone different. But one of the things I think I kind of came to the conclusion of is that, I could have done this. I should have done that. All of these things could have, should have, would have been different. But it didn't. And we just have to live with the way things are and focus on reality. The reality is this is what happened and this is what went down. And whether we could have done things differently, whether it was me or whether it was the guys he was serving with, or his chain of command, the leadership, any of that who made the decision to go on this mission. Look, they made the decision. They made the best decision that they could with the information that they had at the time. I don't think any of them looked at the mission plan or any of that and said, you know what, we're losing some guys today. Let's do this. I don't think any of them had that thought in their mind. They probably thought, hey, this is probably going to be a dangerous mission. Okay, well, yeah, we're infantrymen, so of course it's going to be dangerous. Like, that's just what you do. You said you were EOD, right? Like that. It's not like you're out there playing with plastic toy guns. You're playing with real explosives, and that's a dangerous situation. And the enemy is real. They have real guns. They have real bombs. They have real all the things that they have. They want to people. And so of course it's going to be dangerous. So, just because something's dangerous doesn't mean that you shouldn't do it. Obviously, yeah, make whatever accommodations you can to make it as safe as possible. But, at the end of the day, it's a dangerous job. And so, I don't hold any, negative feelings towards any of the leadership or any of the folks on his end. The only person I really have bad feelings for is the guy who pulled the trigger. And from what I understand, he very shortly thereafter, it was, so, there's nobody left on this planet that I have any negative feeling towards, about all that.
Yeah, really. The only answer, you can't get caught up in the what ifs. It's like a revolving door. There's no answer to that. And
right.
I had to deal with that myself. And you're right. The only real answer is it unfolded the way it did. So you got to drive forward.
Exactly.
Drive on. But one thing I know the military does very, very well, at least nowadays, is the mortuary affairs. And they never left him alone.
Right.
From that point forward, coming home. And I think that's important for Americans to know, that we treat our fallen with incredible respect. Did you come home with him? Did you fly home with him?
Yeah, I left Afghanistan with him. I was on the same flight as him. We got as far as Kuwait, and then we went our separate ways. And so, I was told, I was actually kind of pissed off at that because, as any soldier will tell you, like, you never leave a fallen soldier. And in my mind, not only was he a fallen soldier, he was my brother. And so, like, I felt extra responsible for being with him. And, I was told that, I would be of more use to my family, back home than I would be to him, and that he would not be left alone, at all. Someone would be with him at all times. At the time, that wasn't really sitting well with me. I was still angry and upset about that response. I wanted to be with him, the entire way back home. But when he got off the plane in Kuwait, they had the ramp ceremony there in Kuwait. They took him there. They put him in the back of a it was kind of like a van that they put him in, and they took him to wherever he went off to, and that was the last time I saw him until he came back home. I really wish I had that opportunity, but looking back on it now, I think they were right, and I probably was better off coming back home and making it so that my family was at least not worried about where I was, or any of that kind of stuff,
Well, you had to go through Dover, right?
Yes. Yeah. And from what I understand, through that whole process, so there's a, process that the Mortuary Affairs team goes through in Kuwait, to kind of, I guess, clear his body, make sure there's no explosives or anything like that, on him or anything like that. And then they fly him into, Dover, and when they're in Dover, they go through a whole process of, cleaning him up and getting his uniform squared away, and
give him a new pair of pants.
Yeah, get everything straightened up, for him. He's, basically prepared as good as possible to be returned home. And then, from there, once they've done all that, they flew his body home, and we had the opportunity to go down to Dover to, receive his body there at Dover, but we opted to stay in Connecticut instead. And so when we finally received his body, it was in Connecticut. So that was a difficult day too, because, just seeing his body coming off the plane, obviously it was in a casket, but it was still seeing him come off the plane like that was tough. Seeing a flag draped coffin is very an emotional visual thing.
How about you? You came home and the governor said you don't have to go back on this deployment, but you were still in the Guard.
Yep.
Did you go back to work? Did you? What was that? What was life like besides the? We talked a little bit about the family side. What about just the professional side, personal side? What's going on there?
That was a kind of an interesting situation. My boss at the time, he said he was a former Air Force, so he was familiar with military and stuff, and he knew that I was obviously going through some stuff. And so this was late August when I came home, and our deployment wasn't supposed to be over until like November or early November, late October, somewhere around that time frame. And he said, "Look, we weren't expecting you back until November anyways. So take the time, be with your family, do what you need to do." And so I basically got a couple months off from going back to work. I don't know if that was a good thing or a bad thing. It was good in the sense that I got to stay with my family and do that type of stuff, be there with my family and everything. But, in a way I might've needed a distraction to get back into the world and start just doing life and letting that be a distraction. But when I eventually did get back to work, I hated it. I hated going into work, sitting in traffic, the water cooler talk and all the crap that goes on in an office. I was just like, I hate the small talk. I don't want to deal with this stuff anymore. I dreaded waking up in the morning, going to work. It was like every morning the alarm clock would go off, and I was like, I want to throw this thing through the window. I don't ever want to go into this office again. And I only lasted at that job for another, I want to say maybe a month or two before I ended up quitting, because I was like, mentally, I just can't handle this job anymore. It was a boring job too. I worked in corporate finance at an insurance company, which is about as exciting as it sounds. And, coming from a combat zone and then going into that, it was like, I needed something different, and I it was just not the right fit for me. So it was a difficult transition. I eventually left that, got another job. I was actually working for my father for a little bit, which that, worked for a little bit, but then I decided I wanted to be my own boss and set my own hours and set my own schedule and be responsible for my own, destiny basically. And that's what I did. I started a business. I was doing, like website, design and programming and things like that. And so it was it was definitely a change of pace, but it was something that I was, I think I needed, at that time. I needed to, kind of just have my own pace, because there were days when I was just not able to focus at all. And I needed to be able to take time myself and step away and just not have to worry about deadlines or anything like that other people were relying on me for. And, if I failed and I screwed up, that was on me. I wasn't letting a team down. I was letting myself down. And so, I felt like I sort of needed that at that point. So, that's kind of where I wound up. And, it was, I think, also helpful too, because, working for myself, like I said, I could set my own hours. I was going to therapy quite frequently, and I needed time off. And, finding a job that would let you take that much time off was probably not going to be the easiest thing to do either. So, I felt like that was just something I needed to do for me. And, it worked out, financially, it worked out well. I did okay for myself. And, it was a learning curve. I'd never been an entrepreneur before, but I kind of figured it out as I went along, and, allowed me to, deal with some of the more stressful aspects of it. But I felt like I needed some chaos, a little bit more chaos in my life than a structured, going 9 to 5 and, work in a corporate cubicle, environment. There was really no chaos in that environment that I could see. And so, I felt like I needed a little bit of that.
Try you working from home with a young kid.
Yeah.
Not enough chaos there.
Yeah, that was chaotic. And that's where I was, that's where my business was, working out of my home. So, with a young kid, and then shortly thereafter we had a second kid. And so there was noise going on in that house all the time. And it was, it was chaotic. Probably didn't help my anger, with all the noise, but I eventually managed that, to manage to figure that out.
Yeah. My oldest is 14 now, which comes with its own set of different kind of chaos, but we have, identical twin 6-year-olds. And it's constantly the Wyatt and Owen show all day, every day.
Yeah.
Same bat channel. But, yeah, it's a circus. Do you think going solo, going into business for yourself, I think that was the beginning of the catharsis about maybe bringing around a little more personal health? Or what was it that helped you get through that coming home?
Yeah, it gave me I think it gave me the opportunity to start focusing on myself a little bit. Because I think if I was working in an office environment, a corporate environment or whatever, not that they wouldn't give me time off if I needed it. I'm sure they would have, because they were great with everything. When I was deployed, they were super supportive. They invited my wife into the office for, just to see how she's doing and everything. And they were really supportive of me and my family and everything like that. And I'm sure if I needed something, they would have bent over backwards to figure out how to give it to me. I would not have felt comfortable asking for it, though. Asking for time off, asking for any kind of special treatment or anything like that. I wouldn't have thought that I deserved anything special. They already gave so much. They helped my family and everything while I was deployed and everything. And so how could I ask for more at that point? And so I think I would have had a problem even asking for it. And so I wouldn't have gotten the help that I did need had I not walked away from all that. So for me anyways, it turned out to be the right move to walk away from that environment so that I would feel comfortable enough to be able to go and get the help that I needed.
When did you decide that you wanted to write a book or start the podcast? When did that come about?
Yeah, both of those came about around the same time. I had actually started writing what ended up becoming my book. I started writing that shortly after getting home. But it was really mostly just notes of dates and times and places. I mean, of things that had occurred, things that I didn't want to forget, because I knew as you get older, your memory kind of plays tricks on you, and you remember things differently than they actually took place. So I didn't want to forget anything. So I started writing stuff down. Figured eventually my kids might have questions about, what I did in the war, and I wanted to be able to tell them accurately. So I started just writing stuff down, shortly after getting home, and then I just kind of filed it away and didn't really think much about it. And then 2019 came around, and at that point, the platoon that I had served with in Afghanistan, we had started losing some guys to after coming back home. And that, like, one was too many, but then there's two, and then other guys that I served with, and whether they were in my platoon or not, they guys that I knew were taking their life. And I started realizing that I wasn't the only one struggling after coming back from combat. There's a lot of people, and it wasn't just guys that I served with either. There's people across the military, that were having trouble. And I was like, I don't really want to sit around waiting for another phone call saying another friend is gone, or another, person that I know is gone. And so, I said, I want to help people, but I want to reach as many people as possible. And so I decided to start my podcast. It's called the Drive On Podcast. And I started it to really share stories of other veterans who are maybe they went through hell, and they came out the other side stronger, better, changed in one way or another, and they could share their story, hopefully as an inspiration to somebody else, but also to share resources of things that are out there, maybe that's outside the VA. We all know that the VA exists, and not everybody's comfortable with going to the VA for one reason or another, but there are thousands of nonprofits out there that offer services that are very similar to, or even different from what the VA has to offer. So even if you went through the VA and you tried everything that they have to offer and it's not working for you, there's other stuff out there. And it's not just nonprofits. There's other organizations, for-profit organizations that you might have to pay for, but they're out there as well. So there is always an option for a different form of treatment, a different form of therapy, a different, whatever you want to call it. No matter what you're going through, there's something out there for everybody. And, I did that really just to give hope to those people who might be sitting there alone, thinking that they are going through this on their own and nobody else understands them. Nobody else knows what they're going through. Because, nothing could be further from the truth. There are people out there who definitely understand what you're going through, and they want to help. And so I started that podcast back in 2019. So it's been about 6 years now that I've had that show going. And it was around that same time that I decided to write my book, because I thought that story was a story that needed to be told and shared with the world. Not only for me, but also for my brother, because I know he's not around to tell his story anymore. And I want that to be a story that outlives both of us and continues on for, years to come. And, when you put that story on paper, that book will be around for quite some time. Hopefully will outlive me. And that way, my kids will have answers if they don't get a chance to ask me a question. Hopefully I've answered it in the book. But even, grandkids and great grandkids, they'll be able to read the story too. And kind of have a understanding of what took place. And not just them, but society in general. I mean, a lot of people don't even know anybody who served in the military, never mind deployed to a combat zone. And so they don't know necessarily what kind of things you go through when you're deployed. And so I want to be able to share that story with just the general public as well, so that they have at least one soldier's perspective on what took place in the war and what, what we had to go through. And I think the more stories like that are out there, from other soldiers and sailors and Marines and airmen, and, I'm not trying to, forget any of them as well. But, more of those stories that are out there, the better, because then people will start to understand what we're going through and, start to hopefully realize that there's a real family, a real person behind those names that you might hear on the news when there's a fallen soldier overseas. It's not just a 15-second soundbite on the local news. They're real people. And that's something that took me time to understand as well. Because like I said before, I used to think it was just other people that dealt with these things, and couldn't be further from the truth.
Yeah, I don't think the average citizen thinks about it all that much.
Right.
They don't really know the stories. And once the news cycle moves on, it's just not on the radar.
Yeah.
But it's definitely important because there are, for one, we're not two different species of human,
right?
Veteran and civilian, and we need to better integrate and tell that story, and it's for both sides.
Mm-hmm.
And
yeah, exactly.
Also, there are definitely veterans out there that are still struggling,
mm-hmm.
and I think the stories. It was just yesterday or the day before. Somebody in one of the EOD groups posted, the unthinkable. That he said that he failed all of us. He failed his family. He, leave the insurance or whatever the way it is, and said his goodbyes on Facebook, and then he went radio silent. I still don't know what happened to him, but that's not the first time something like that's happened. So people need to know. And our fellow veterans that are feeling like they are trapped, that there is no better answer. We got to get those resources out to them. Let them know that the people care, that there are answers, there are options, and definitely appreciate the fact that you've got one of those resources in the Drive On podcast. Thank you.
Yeah, no, thank you. Yeah, absolutely. I think we definitely need to do a better job at making sure that people know that there are resources, that they're not alone, that there are people who understand what they're going through, and it's okay to ask for help.
Well, I know we're getting a little bit long here, but if you've got a couple more minutes, just a couple,
sure.
We've got the final segment is the countdown to impact.
Okay.
And that's 3 books, 2 quotes, and 1 person who have all made an impact in your life.
Ooh, so 3 books. That's going to be a tough one. I am not the biggest reader out there. So I know, and I wrote a book too, so it's kind of interesting, but that I decided to write a book, but I'm not the biggest of readers. But there's one book that does come to mind. It's actually a woman. She was in the Coast Guard, and I had her as a guest on my show a few years ago. Actually, a couple times I think she's been on the show. Her name is Ashley Leppert, and her book is called The Hurricane Within. And she was in the Coast Guard during Hurricane Harvey, and it kind of wreaked havoc on New Orleans and that area. And she was part of the rescue mission that went in and saved a bunch of people. And so she wrote about that, and just her story is very inspiring. And so that was one of the books that I've read that I really enjoyed reading that book and hearing her story and how her faith carried her through and all these things. So those were important, I think an important story to tell, and obviously an important mission that they were on. And I in the other branches of the military, we always give the Coast Guard hell for not being, quote unquote, a real branch of the military, or, being puddle pirates or whatever we call them, but they do some really important work, and, it's all in good fun, I think, when we joke around with them. I'm going to have to pass on some of the other, on the books, because honestly, I am not a huge reader. So I'm going to pass on that. But, some people that have had some impact on me. I'm just going to say, doing this podcast that I've done, I have over 500 episodes now. So I have had conversations with hundreds of people who, every one of them have had an inspiring story of one sort or another, that has been able to help just kind of shift my perspective on things just a little bit. And so, in a way, I do this show for the fellow veterans out there who are struggling, but in a way, I also do it for myself, because I know that every time I have a conversation with somebody else, that they are going to bring some new little twist to the table, and it's just going to help me process things maybe just a little bit better, and maybe understand a little bit about myself, a little bit about what I'm going through a little bit better. And the more of these conversations I can have, the better maybe I'll be. And so, there's been, countless people on the show that I've had conversations with that have had, that type of impact on me, and not just on me, but I also on listeners too. I get.
How many episodes are you up to now?
It's over 500. I did the 500th episode, came out sometime last month. So I think I've recorded over 530 so far. They're not all out yet, but it's one of those things when I get started on something, I'm going to keep going and doing it, or I'm just going to completely quit. So there's no in between for me. It's either pedal to the metal or hitting the brakes and getting out of the car altogether. So that's kind of where the way I kind of focus on things. But
any words of wisdom, quotes, rules of thumb, anything like that? Yeah,
I mean, one thing I want to make sure I tell people whenever I'm talking to anybody who might be struggling, whether it's the same way that I did, with grief and loss, or PTSD, or with, dealing with issues from deployments or the military in general, is that you're not alone. There's a huge family of people who want to help you. You're not a burden to them. You asking for help from somebody is not going to be putting somebody out. If you pick up the phone and call somebody and ask for help, they're not going to say, "Oh man, it's this guy again. I can't believe he's calling me to ask for help." Like, no, they're going to do the same thing that you would do for them if they were calling you. They're going to drop everything, and they're going to do what they can to help you. And so, don't be afraid to reach out, ask for help, and you matter. You should be here, the world's a better place with you in it. So stick around.
All right, terrific. Instead of a 3, 2, 1, we're doing 530 and 1. Perfect.
It's a little twist to it, but I can't be super conventional.
I like when the guys throw me some curveballs. It's great. All right. So what does leaving an impact mean to you?
Yeah, I think for me, the impact that I have, I looked at when I started my show, I said to myself, if I can help just one person, then it'll be a job well done and mission accomplished. Right. And I know after all these years, it's been more than one person, but whenever a tragedy strikes a family, a community, whatever, there's this ripple effect that takes place where it doesn't just affect the immediate people who, if somebody takes their life, it's not just their immediate family who feels the effects. It's their coworkers, it's their neighbors, it's their, maybe people who go to church with them, maybe, other people in their community, and it ripples out. And so, it's not just those people who knew that person. It's the people who know the people who knew that person. And it's a ripple effect that goes out. And so for every one person that has stuck around, who hasn't taken their life, that's one group of those people who are better off for it. It's not just that one person. And so, when I look at, the type of work that I do with my podcast, that you do with your show, and other people do with their shows, if it helps just one person, it's not just the one person. It's a huge impact that you have on a lot of people, and I really feel that it's a much bigger impact than that just one person. So, for everybody out there who's listening, just think about all those people who would be affected in that ripple that's around you, and it's a big deal.
Yeah, and it really doesn't take much.
Yeah,
every day, a smile, handshake,
sure.
A compliment. Sometimes you really don't know what little act is going to make a huge impact in somebody else's life. You don't know what's going on in their lives, and all they need is a kind word. Sometimes they just need to know that there's somebody else there.
Exactly.
And you're absolutely right. The other thing is the healing part of looking for opportunities for impact, looking for opportunities to, give back abundance. That changes our brain. That turns our thinking completely around. And, living that life of gratitude and compassion, it's the antidote for depression. It's the antidote for anger.
Right.
Yeah. So I think that's fantastic. It's a great place to wrap up. Scott, so. If anybody wants to, everybody, of course, will want to find out more about you, follow you, where do they find you, the show, the book, all of that?
Yeah, sure. So the podcast you can find at driveonpodcast.com, and anywhere that you listen to podcasts, just search for Drive On and you should be able to find it there. The book is available on Amazon. It's called Surviving Son, and check it out on Amazon there, and it's available in all the formats that you can that you might want, hardcover, paperback, audiobook, ebook, whatever format that you want, I got them all there for you. So Amazon for that, and driveonpodcast.com for the podcast.
Well, thank you very much, Scott. I really appreciate your time and your story. It's remarkable, and I appreciate everything you've gone through and come out the other end. Thank you for your service and your family's sacrifice, and I hope to talk to you again soon.
Yeah, I appreciate it. Thanks so much.
Well, folks, that's the show. I really appreciate you tuning in. And before you turn this show off, please go over to the YouTube app if you haven't already. If you're not watching there, like and subscribe. That's where we call home. If you're listening to it on Apple or Spotify or otherwise, give it 5 stars, share it, and don't forget to subscribe. See you next week. Make an impact.